Wafa Labidat. You are listening to the Women Power Podcast, a subsidiary platform to the Women Power Summit, the largest event in MENA, with the aim of empowering women and helping them achieve their absolute highest potential. Each week on the Women Power Podcast, you will hear honest, vulnerable, authentic, real conversations from inspiring women. These women will share their experiences and stories into what it takes to build a successful business and career. The podcast will share insight and inspiration and hopefully inspire action and lead change. Today I'm here with a dear friend of mine and somebody I'm so excited to introduce as my guest for the first episode. Today I'm here with Neda Alawi, who founded Neda, a luxury lifestyle brand that transforms art into fashion accessories and apparel in partnership with Middle Eastern artists. Today, Neda is stocked in department stores such as Saks Fifth Avenue, Middle East, and the Louvre, Abu Dhabi. Neda began her career in a very different world to fashion and art, the oil and gas industry in Houston, Texas. She worked with a firm specializing in oil drilling, which stood her in good stead when she returned to the Gulf to start her family's business, Osho, in occupational health and safety. Her entrepreneurial spirit helped the business win major contracts and flourish in Bahrain. Ned is also a former board member at the Bahrain Economic Development Board and Bahrain Bourse. She was also recognized at the Mohammed bin Rashid Awards for Young Business Leaders as the best Arab startup business in the female category. Welcome, Neda. Now, before we begin, I really wanted to talk about why I chose Neda as the first person to interview for the first season of the Woman Power Podcast. I met Neda years ago and we really kept bumping into each other at all these different events. And I remember putting effort to really watch her career and follow her brand. I saw her brand going through this amazing trajectory, this positive trajectory of growth. And every time I saw Neda, she would always want to connect me and support me as much as she possibly could. I remember getting a call from her one day where she said, I know you have a brand that you represent or that you own called Barrel and Drum. And I am in Dubai and I went to this store and I feel like your brand would fit really well in the store. That was one of my first interactions with her. And that was a huge moment for me from a friendship perspective because she really took the time to want to help and support without asking for anything in return. And our relationship has pretty much been an incredible exchange of inspiration and advice and support and a lot of nurturing and positive reinforcement. I'm so excited that you're here with me today. I recorded earlier I was saying earlier how I'm so excited you're the person that I'm kickstarting this podcast with, because I really feel like we have great chemistry, not just because we are growing our companies and our businesses, but I feel like we're nurturing friends to each other and we have this incredible exchange of business and fun and humor. And so I really hope I can bring some of that conversation that I love, that natural conversation, into the podcast today. So I really want to honor this podcast by saying welcome. And I'm so excited that you're here. So my first question is, let's talk about the elephant in the room with COVID-19. So how are you using this time?
So from the beginning, I decided I'm not going to panic. From the minute it happened, I knew it was something that was going to hit us. And I decided that I'm not going to panic. I'm not going to lie to you. There was a day or two that I had to find solutions and answers because I knew this would have been something that would have devastated my company, my family, everything.
I remember you called me on that day.
Yeah, I did. I called you. I called another friend because I wanted to find a solution that would be not only fair, but we would deal with the situation in the best possible way we can. After that, I decided I'm going to see the beauty in this, which is, thank God, I have a way of looking at things from a positive perspective. And I decided I'm going to use that time to be. When I say I use it to be, I wanted to focus on me. I even wrote an affirmation that I'm going to use this time to create content. I'm going to use this time to focus on my health. I'm going to use this time to focus on my body. I'm going to use this time to love my family. So I wrote some affirmations. And I kept saying them on the first day. Actually, I kept saying them on the first day and every day after that until I became, satisfied and happy with them. After that, things changed for us now. As you know, we're almost at full capacity operation because we found a way to contribute.
So you pivoted.
We did pivot and we found a way to contribute. And that was one of the things that I was trying to not to think about is how can I add something and help during this time? Because I didn't want to be a spectator, although that was my intention in the beginning, is just to wait this off and see what happens. But there was a time when we pivoted and we actually repurposed our cotton. We have a big line of scarves, and we repurposed our cotton scarves, and we created face masks out of our cotton scarves. And
I saw them. They look amazing. I'm sure they're flying off the shelves because I feel like that's where the demand is. And just going back to your anxious day, you said you had a period where you just stood still and you said, you know what, I'm just going to be. And then you slowly found your footing again and turned this into an opportunity. The way I was anxious is I felt there was so much noise in my head and I needed to focus on how am I going to get through this? How am I going to, with my team without harming anybody? How can we all get through this? So when you say harming anybody, you mean letting anybody go or?
Yes. I didn't want to let anybody go from the beginning. I didn't want to stop their livelihoods or anything because everybody needs to eat. Everybody needs to pay. A lot of people need to pay rent and they have their own financial responsibilities. I was very grateful that the government offered a lot of relief programs. But from our side, we did what we could and to the best of our abilities in supporting our people.
So do you feel you turned it around by focusing on this new product and now you're channeling all that energy into building new product for your brand?
This time we were supposed to launch a new collection and it's something we worked on for the past year and a half. And it's a bit, I don't want to say sad, but we're launching a luxury collection at a time when people are
going back to the bare necessities.
Yes, and not only that, but they feel like they have other priorities. We are launching them because we're launching this collection because we worked very hard on it. However, we were able to pivot what we have in terms of existing product to give the people something they need at this time. And we combined it with a charity cause so that we can support families here. And in a way, we are giving ourselves purpose. And even my people feel like they're helping other people. And that's such a powerful motivation for them and for myself.
So it's like the silver lining.
I feel good. To be honest, I feel good because I can contribute during this time. In my own way, it's different, but I feel good about it. And I feel like there will, I don't know, 20, 30 years from now, when I show pictures of this phase or this period, I would say that there was something that I did or there's something that my company did.
I think you said something really nice to me the other day. Like, I want to know, looking back, how we were a part of history, because this is a very historic period in everybody's life and we're all going to look back and remember how we spent our time. So you said that what motivated me is telling my team we are part of history in a very minor or small way. This is our contribution, however small or however beautiful it is. It's our imprint.
Yeah.
So let's journey back to the very beginning. I'm quite conscious about some of the subjects I want to talk about with you, but I would love to know, what was your first job, like your first paid job?
So my first job, which I don't actually put on my CV, it was a sales job at a store. It was a men's apparel store. It was designated for the middle class African American community. I had to convince my customers that a lime green or royal blue suit was stylish and fashionable.
Did you
And
believe it was stylish? Or
at the time I was. I mean, I had to feed that to myself. I think I had to feed that to myself. And fashion is very different in different segments of people and different mentalities. And I mean, if you ask me today, would I recommend a lime green suit to a man? I wouldn't. I might do a blue suit, not lime green, obviously, but and I would style it differently. I would probably, change, add white pants to the mix and a pocket square and probably a nice, Panama
so
hat.
you'd make it work now, but you wouldn't sell the full lime
Lime
green.
and lime, and then matching socks and, a shirt. I mean, the shirt and the socks, obviously, they were different colors, but it was a segment that I did not belong to that segment. So I had to convince them how, with the product I had, with the offering that we had. And I did that only for a month. And the owner of the company, he was such a nice person, and he knew that this was going to be temporary. He actually knew that I was, I don't want to sound like I'm, stuck up, but I was too good for this business.
So what did you learn from your first job? If you could just say the one thing I learned from that experience.
See, I don't choose that job as my first because it was my first paid job, but I had so much more interesting jobs after that. And there's one that I really am very proud of. The next job after this, it was a longer period, and I did it while I was a student, even during the time I went to school, which is I did market research. So I used to it was market research for the petroleum industry, for the oil and gas industry. And basically, I had to convince people to stay on the phone for an hour and a half of their job just to answer a survey. And I used to get paid by survey. I know it was.
That's crazy.
It was crazy, but I loved it. To me, success is such a motivation because if I get one, it means I got paid, and that's validation, which means I can get the second and the third, and I had to persuade someone to take time off of their very, very busy work schedule and talk to me for that much of a time.
So how did you convince them? So there's a lot of convincing going on. There's convincing in your first job or selling products.
I'm constantly convincing people, even my job after that, which is what I consider, I think, the strongest and the last job I had. I joined a company. It was in the oil and gas industry as well. I mean, obviously I was in Texas, so anything you do would be in oil and gas, almost anything you do. When I interviewed for a marketing position, but when I actually started in the company, they put me at the front desk, so I had to do secretarial work until I convinced the CEO to give me a marketing position, until he actually, when I left that company, I was the VP of sales and marketing.
Why was it so important for you to get paid or to get to work while you were a student? I know, looking back on my experience, not a lot of women that I studied with were interested in work experience. They wanted to study and then they wanted to enjoy their experience being a student. But it was important to me, as it was to you, or is to you clearly, to continue to work. Why was that important to you?
So since a young age, responsibility was drilled into me. I don't even think that I started to have fun. Looking back at university days, I was a very, very, very serious student. And to me, I went there for an objective to study. I even finished my bachelor degree in 3 years. And to me, I needed to improve on my CV. It was something where I needed to gain credit, if we're speaking in university terms, when it comes to getting job experience, because I knew I would be valuable if I got experience.
So I agree. I mean, in my experience, I thought that the more experience I got, the more accelerated skill set, like I would accelerate my ability to gain more skills. And like you said, I would be of value and I would have more choices.
And that's reality. I mean, if only to prove, what was your path after you gained all that experiences? It accelerated everything. For example, it gave me a lot of exposure when I started my own company, my first company with my dad, and and every experience builds on to get a stronger next experience.
This podcast is brought to you by O'Brien Hill. O'Brien Hill is a leading communications agency focusing on public relations, event management, and marketing. It's made up of a fantastic group of creatives in the design and PR fields. The agency first came to life in 2010 as my brainchild. Our creative consulting services were in demand in the UK after our online publication Sketchbook became an overnight success. Much like a proud mama, our agency's namesake is attributed to the place of its inception, Notting Hill. It's now 10 years later and we're one of the leading communication agencies in town, and we as a team are incredibly proud to be working on this very podcast behind the scenes. Check us out on www.obienhill.com. So not many people know about your past life before Anida, which was, and I explained this earlier, but not many people know about your past life with Osho. When did you feel it was the right time to leave this business that you helped build with your family and transition into your brand? Do you remember that moment where you were like, I need a new challenge or have a new idea?
Yeah.
Can you tell me a bit more about that?
It got to a point where things were moving on their own. The business was operating and it was fine without me. And I felt that it was becoming too routine for me. And I decided by that time that I have time to start a new hobby. And I'd like to get a new hobby. And my hobby at that time, I wanted to paint. I wanted to express myself in color. I didn't want to draw I just wanted to throw colors on a canvas. That's exactly what I wanted to do.
So I remember a story that you once shared with me, which I found out quite recently actually, about your scarves being put in some sort of suitcase in the back of your car, and you used to take it around. You used to take it around and meet different people to show them your samples. Can you tell me a bit about that experience?
When we started in Nida, myself and my sister, I think we did it because we wanted to give something beautiful to the world. And for every business, I mean, it was very easy for us to decide when to launch them and how to launch them. We had a target that we wanted to launch them during Jewelry Arabia. And we launched them in Jewelry Arabia of 2011. And we said we were going to only sell online and in exhibitions. And it was a nice idealistic view and it was lovely. And we did very well during Jewelry Arabia. We got a lot of customers, a lot of people discovered us, a lot of people heard about us, and it gave us that buzz. And people kept asking, they were interested, they wanted the scarves, they wanted to see them. I did not have a platform to show my scarves. And even then at the time, we had an online, or actually it took a while to build our online store. And I still think at that time, we were not able to sell online in the same way and success that we have right now. Because there's this very big misconception about online selling, which is just put it online and people are going to buy it. It's very wrong, because people need to gain an understanding of your product before they invest in it.
So what was one of your biggest challenges starting up? What was the one thing that you remember that drove you mad? If you could...
I don't know. That's a very good question. Because, and I say this, every day running a business is like a reality show. I can seriously have a reality show about my business, and it would be so interesting because I have a different challenge every day. And so I don't keep track of the challenges, I keep track of the progress because I can't think of challenge.
But do you recall like an experience where you didn't have access to funding or access to mentors, where you felt stuck, or you almost were like, I'm going to scratch this and we're not going to continue? Do you remember an experience where you felt depleted or down about a specific subject, and how did you overcome it?
But in 2012, when I was doing both jobs, I wasn't feeling like I was giving it my sincere effort in either or. It felt like one of them was my husband and one of them was my boyfriend. And I felt like I was cheating with one on the other constantly. I know it's a very touchy analogy, but this is how I truly felt. And
Did you feel like you had to make a decision
Yes.
about where to put your energy?
by the end of 2012, I went to my dad and I was afraid of confronting him about leaving the business we built together. But he looked like he was disappointed. He didn't say it to my face. He said, "God bless you. Do what you feel you want to do." I mean, that was such a nice way of my dad, accepting me leaving.
Have your parents always supported you?
Yes. You see, my dad didn't understand Aneda from the beginning. It took him a while to get it. And then the minute he did, that he came instantly proud, and he started wearing a pocket square everywhere he went. My mom has been, I would say, my cheerleader. Even if sometimes she doesn't understand what I'm doing, she will still support me and then worry about understanding about it later on. And she's constantly giving us ideas and how can we improve our business and develop. And
That's really hard to find, I think, parents who are supportive. A lot of the people that I connect with, at some point or another, I find out that they did not have either a supportive parent, so both, or they'd have only one supportive parent. So it's quite rare to find. Do you think that that had to do with your confidence? Because I know you're quite a confident person.
I've learned something in dealing with parents and decision makers. And if you want to, you got to be selling all the time. You got to be selling even when it comes to your boss, even when it comes to your parents. I remember that if I wanted to buy something and I wanted my dad to buy it for me, I needed to give him a sheet of paper explaining why is this.
So you had to pitch to your parents?
I had to pitch to my parents. And I remember that I wanted a scanner. And my dad said, "Okay, why don't you make me a proposal? Why do you need the scanner? Do you remember scanners? I don't know if anybody remembers
No,
scanners.
I think are still used, but I love that you had to pitch. So at a very young age, what age were you that you needed a scanner? Why did you need a scanner?
Because obviously I needed, like,
To send documents.
I see, growing up, I was obsessed with computers. I was obsessed with creating beautiful, like my school reports looked so beautiful. And that's what I did when I was in school. I took that part of the whole project that you worry about the content. I'm going to make it pretty. I'm going to make it pretty. And that was really my job. And I needed scanners to make these reports look great and talk. And
So you pitched to your dad.
I pitched to my dad. And
Did he get you the scanner?
see, you know something? That day I was doing my morning pages, which my time to journal. And there was a question, what is your favorite toy? And you know what? I never got the Barbie house, the Barbie car, but I got the computers. I got all the intelligent kind of games.
I love that.
And you know what? My sister thought it was a funny thing because she got the Barbie cars and Barbie house, but I got the games that have arithmancy or spelling or things like that.
So when you ask for these things from your parents,
It's an easy sell because I'm going to use it for school. I'm going to use it to better myself. My dad felt it was so... he felt that he can always, and when it comes to spending money, that he can always invest in improving the way I did things and improved things. Even in Osho, I remember that I asked him, Dad, we need to make a great brochure. And I know this sounds very basic right now, but he didn't believe in that. And I found a friend who was with me in university, and I said, would you make a brochure? He seriously, like, he donated. He did a brochure for us in Osho. And then I took the money, I took some money and I printed it. And the minute clients saw that, we started getting better and better clients. And I swear to God, my dad came, he's like, okay, let's do another brochure. Because he saw the value in having the right documents, the right materials, and he started believing in how I, presented things.
Can you tell me, so we're going to segue back to business and purpose, but I want to know about how you pitched this to your first stock. Like, what is the process of pitching your brand to a stockist?
So the first thing is I love our product and I think it's the most beautiful and I believe in it. And I mean, when we created it, we wanted to share art with the world in our own way. We wanted to bring it to a different audience.
So how did you take that? And when you first met a stockist that you're like, okay, I want to stock my brand in this department store. Can you tell me what that process is like?
See, the thing is, it's basically the whole world conspires with you for you to get what you want, right? And because Nadia is so aligned with me personally, it's literally the segment. I'm in that segment, so I'm selling to a segment that I belong to. So obviously, I shop in the same places. I would go. And I was a customer there. And I would say it was Saks Fifth Avenue. That was my first stockist in Nedia. And I was a customer there. And one of the salespeople is someone I built a relationship with because I used to be his customer in another store. And I was having a conversation and I told him that we have this brand. What do you think? I was just picking his brains. And he said, why don't you speak to our store manager? Would you like me to get an appointment for you? And I went. Today, the store manager, I'm very proud to say that he's with one of my very good friends. He's a mentor. He helps me in every possible way he can. He's one of the
He's one of your champions.
He is one of my champions, and I never forget people who help and support me grow in my company and my career. And I think one of the reasons that we became a successful brand is because of his support. When I tell him that, he's like, Nadia, you succeeded because you worked very hard, and I appreciate that because when you say that to a person and they only say something nice back to you, it validates you more because people don't do favors for you if you're not ready or if you don't have something good to show. It means you equally have the right moment, the right opportunity, and the right offer for them as well.
So when you had that meeting with Saks and you presented your work to the store manager, what was that meeting like? Did you put out your work? Did you hang anything?
So I did take my red box. You started asking me about the red box, and it was basically when I was just selling and having the product with me all the time. I took my red box and I showed him the different varieties of artworks that we had. And at the time, we focused on showing a lot of art in one style. So we had one type of scarf that we printed many, many artworks in. And I showed him the packaging and what did the packaging include. And I think that was a big part of the the product is it's like the details and the branding and the package itself. And I think that that's helped us so much in the beginning. Now, when I go back to that first meeting, I thought we would have a second meeting to sell again. I didn't realize that we sold it on that first meeting. When we went to the second meeting, he invited us to come and the buyer to be present as well for her to, to look at the products or the scarves varieties. And she was there. And when I was sitting like halfway, and he keeps reminding me of this moment. He says, Nadia, I remember you sitting on the floor. We were literally, all of us, we were just sitting on the floor of his office, opening our scarves, and the buyer was selecting what worked for the store. See, I thought I was selling to her again, but halfway through the meeting, I realized that the selling was done. We were just making a selection of the product.
How did you get the buy-in from the artists? I know that it's hard when you're starting a project, when you need a collective group of people to collaborate with you on something, to produce a product or service. It could be quite challenging to convince people to either give you exclusivity or to work with you or to partner with you. How did you get that buy-in from this incredible group of artists?
From the beginning, I think what I had was, I think it's very important that when you start a business that it doesn't look or seem very hard, right? So when I thought about it, I said, you know what? All I need is a buy-in from one or two artists. I can start with two artists, and that's how we started in it. I had one artist to buy in. He convinced another artist to come in the collection with him. And then once the product was ready and we had something to show, it was so easy to gain more artists into the mix of artists. Today, we've got more than 25 artists from the region, and we get more and more artists who actually send in their artworks, and they apply. And not only do we scout for them, but we get artists who apply, and sometimes we find treasures in those applications.
So you had that one champion or
Yes.
that one artist who was like, I'm in, and then he opened those doors for you as well. And he sort of backed you and supported you.
He believed in me, and I'd say this artist is Abbas al-Musawi. He believed in me. I mean, I was a student in the beginning, and I kept pitching different ideas to him until I pitched an idea that worked for him, and he was okay. I don't know or think that he actually understood my full idea in the beginning, but he got excited about it. I think he imagined something, and he says to me that, Neda, what you did has gone way beyond what I imagined. And I'm so proud and impressed,
And you're friends with all your artists. I feel that you support them and you have a relationship with them. I think something that keeps recurring throughout our conversation is the fact that you value relationships.
Yes.
And it's not about business or sales as much as it is fostering those relationships, nurturing them, checking in with them, showing gratitude. So weaved in your journey has been your relationship with your stockists, your artists, your team, etc.
And I feel that, and I say that, and it's the most thing I love about Neda is because I'm aligned with people who have the same personal values as I do.
What are some of your values?
So some of my values are, I love beauty. I love elegance. And when you have that with other people, you can connect on that idea itself.
Or on that level.
Yeah, on that idea and level. Because sometimes, I remember sitting in meetings, and it seems like I'm talking in a language and the client is talking another language. And sometimes he can't tell me the truth. Sometimes when you feel like you're sitting in front of someone and he's giving you part of the information, he's not giving you the full truth. But once you connect with someone on a soul and a mind level, you can actually understand their motives and why they would do something or not. And that's what I felt with Neda.
Let's talk about Neda, the board member. So you're one of the very few women, and also one of the very few single women that has been...
I feel like there's a Beyonce song coming in. Oh, the single ladies.
But it is quite rare to find a board member who's single and young to be, and I say this because it's not part of the norm. There's absolutely nothing wrong with being single. But what I'm saying is, what is the process of being chosen to become a board member? Do you get invited? Are you referred? Do you apply?
I'd like to know that as well. See, I know from my cases because I wanted to know how was I appointed as a board member. There were 2 instances where I was appointed as a board member, and I think I know how I got there. One of them was in Bahrain Bourse, and that appointment came through the Ministry of Finance and the Economic Development Board. I was scouted because I was actually networking in many events, and I was perceived as a very professional person and a very serious businesswoman. That's how I got my first board position, is the perception I put out there, the confidence that I gained because of the way I presented myself.
So were you networking in places where board members would hang out? Was that a strategic thing? Or were you in specific circles where there were decision makers and you felt like you were present in those moments?
I was present in places where decision makers were there as well. Of course, I didn't go with the intention to be appointed as a board member, but someone had a vision. They thought, so of course, in every board, what happens is they have different seats, and for every seat, they have I would say a wish list for that candidate. Like they envision a certain candidate. So we want the candidate to be a woman. We want the candidate to be a businesswoman. We want that candidate to be of this age, of this background. So they look for an interesting mix within a board so that they can check different experiences, it's like sometimes when they want an artist on the board of a bank, because they want to introduce some artistic elements.
Has that happened before? An artist
I haven't seen that, but I know, for example, why was I appointed to the board? Because they wanted me to bring in what an SME mentality would look like.
So representation.
Yes, representation is very important. The second board, I was also in both boards, I was an independent and I represented SMEs. And I think I've added so much value in both positions because I did not came, for example, from the Chamber of Commerce, or I didn't come representing another entity. I came purely as an independent, and that's how. So the Economic Development Board, as well as the Bahrain Bourse, I was an independent. They were looking for a businesswoman. They were looking for someone who managed an SME. And I think that's the profile they were looking for.
How do you deal with criticism? I'm sure that people have criticized what you do. Maybe when you got that board position, I'm sure you've heard somebody say something negative. How do you deal with judgment or somebody sometimes being mean or saying something harsh? How do you deal with that?
So it depends where the criticism is coming from for me. So if it comes from someone whom I actually valued or liked, it's gonna sting. But if it's from someone who's strange, it just passes by. Sometimes I laugh, sometimes, because they don't know me. If they're making a judgment, it's based on them just looking at information from the surface. But when it comes from someone whom I consider as an acquaintance or as a friend, it stings a bit. And and some of them are not criticisms. They're envy statements, they're jealousy statements, and those, they just show you the true nature of someone's, feelings.
This podcast is brought to you by the Women Power Summit. The Women Power Summit is an annual event that hosts more than 2,000 guests to listen, learn, and network with more than 100 plus speakers and industry leaders. The summit creates space for growth, learning, discussion, and collaboration, with the means of creating a space where women can support each other, ask questions, be curious, and be inspired. Dealing with grief. I asked you if I could ask you about this, and you said that you were more than happy to talk about it. So I'm really happy that you said that, because I don't think we talk about grief, and we don't talk about that subject enough. It's a little bit taboo, and I want to know how you dealt with the loss of your dad. I know that you lost him just a short while ago, but I felt that you were so incredibly strong in that period, and I just wanted to understand how you were able to process it and how did you deal with the pain?
My dad died of his illness, and when he was diagnosed, I allowed myself to cry 3 times. I cried when I knew what he was diagnosed with. I cried a short while after that because I was starting to have a nervous breakdown and I didn't know how to deal with it. And then the 3rd time I cried is when, after he got better, he got sick again. So these were the 3 times that I cried during his disease.
But when you said you allowed yourself, you said, I'm only going to do it 3 times, or these were the only 3 times that you...
No, I cried, and then I decided, okay, now you need to be in action mode. So I needed to take care of him. So I needed to remove that being scared. I mean, the reason I cried is because I was scared and because I didn't know, I felt helpless. And that's why I was crying. But I made a decision. After I cried, I made a decision that okay, you need to be strong because you need to make decisions. You need to take decisions and you need to help him. And if you're paralyzed, you can't help anyone else. And to me, fear is paralyzing. But then when he passed away and when there was nothing for me to do, I just let myself cry. And I think it was I've never experienced such sadness, and I've never experienced such pain in my life. Loss, it felt like someone pulled my heart out of my body, but I didn't numb it. I consciously decided that I'm gonna go through this completely. I'm not gonna see him being buried, because seeing your parent, someone who's just direct, I don't know whether, I've never lost anyone that I felt this much grief, but when I saw my dad dead in his, in the hospital bed, I still can see it. I remember the scream of my aunt. I remember everybody crying. I remember walking into the hospital room. I remember his cold body. I remember all of these things. I remember the blame I got from his family members that I stopped people from visiting him because he had low immunity. I remember all of these things. And then I remember the same day, the burial, when he was cleaned. And I could have said that I'm not going to attend those things or not be part of them, but I wanted to be there in every moment. I lived it completely. I did not deny myself any goodbye. I did not deny myself any opportunity to actually be part of that. I attended the prayer when they prayed on him before the burial, okay? And I saw him going to, into the crowd, and I was standing at a distance. I hugged his friends. People were crying. All his friends were crying. All his, these people that I grew up seeing. It was painful. That day was the toughest day of my life, and there's nothing that I can compare it to. And then the days after that, dealing with the funeral. And I don't think I ever, when I used to go to people's funerals, I just would go and I do my duty and I leave. And only in my funeral, in a funeral where we had in our own house, where I felt this is an important ritual. And to me now, during this Corona time, whoever someone passes away, I say it's very tough for two people, someone who dies and someone who comes into life. I think they're both equally hard, because you can't be around people and no one can come to comfort you. So having all these people come and comfort you is so important. But even then, it took me, I think, a day or two to start. What's the first thing that goes into your mind when you lose someone is all the things, or all the canceled plans, all the things you wanted to do but didn't do.
With your father,
your father, yeah, with the person that you lost, because that's what loss is all these canceled plans, canceled opportunities. And you know what, no matter whether your dad or your whoever dies for you, and you lose someone, whether they die because they were sick or it's sudden, they're equally painful. You are still surprised. It doesn't matter. You don't get when someone says, oh, but you had the time to say goodbye. No, I 2 days before my dad passing, we were just thinking of ideas of decorating his room. So we were putting plans to create a new living space for him. And then he left. But I think what helps is trying to look at actually the things you gained, or look at things and thank God for everything you gained. And then I started every day to feel better. My affirmations for that day would be, thank God I had the time with my dad to, for example, some of the things that he wanted us to go on a holiday all in the summer. And I was so sad because we didn't go on that holiday. But then I remembered the summer before, we actually were on a holiday with my dad. And it was one of the most beautiful holidays. Not only that, my dad actually gave us pocket money to go shopping, which I can't remember when was the last time I did that. I was probably very, I was a kid. And just shifting my thoughts and thinking of what was I grateful for every day, and repeating that. I was grateful that my dad spent time with me. He raised me. He was my friend. We didn't have a father-daughter relationship. I was his friend. I was his business partner. So I kept repeating the things I was grateful for, the things that to me made a difference. And that was one thing. The other thing is the support of your family members. Having my mother was such a solid person. Like, she took care of everything. She was just someone we can lean on and depend on. She was standing very, very strong. And then with my siblings, we dealt with grief in a very different way. And then I think we were able to move on together, thank God, because it was so painful. It was just sadness beyond. It's like you lose your interest in happiness, and then life starts coming back. Sometimes I look at my aunts and I see them having my dad's picture on their profile, and I wonder, are they still sad, or have they been able to handle that grief? Because some people, they love to take grief and reshuffle it and use that pain in their heart, and I can't do that. I feel like my dad would want me to be happy in my life. My dad would want me to move on and think of all the, of all the beauty that's there. Of course, it takes a lot of time to get there. It takes a while to get there. But I think I've let all the tears, I think I cried. I wasn't afraid of crying. I wasn't afraid of showing, that I didn't feel like I couldn't show that face to anybody. I felt like when I need to cry, I'm going to cry. When I need to rest, I'm going to rest. So it's a bit tricky dealing with grief, but unfortunately, it's a fact of life that we lose someone dear and close to us, and the older we get, the more people we're going to lose. But it's It's a fact of life.
That's it for this week. Thank you for listening to an episode of the Woman Power Podcast. Next week on the Woman Power Podcast, tune in for a new episode titled Fearless Women. What it takes to be fearless, raising daughters who are fearless. And thank you for downloading and streaming our podcast every week. If you love what you've heard, tag us on Instagram and follow the Woman Power Podcast and Woman Power Summit account for more information on our next episode. Please leave a rating review wherever you get your podcast. It really helps other women discover the show. That's it from me. See you next week.